All right, welcome everyone. Just finishing getting stuff set up, so just give me a few moments, please. Once again, we are here on Discord. We are over streaming live on YouTube, which of course will be recorded and available later. And we're also now on Twitter Spaces. So we have several, methods of listening, and the Twitter Spaces are recorded as well. Let's go ahead and get this. All right, so the live stream on YouTube is now in the stage archive. I'm going to head on over back to stage chat. So for everyone listening, primarily I will be on the stage chat in the Sphere Finance Discord. However, just like last time, we will do our best to kind of pick up different questions from all the different platforms. So I have a lot of ecosystem updates to cover for today. So yes, indeed, I have my tea. We're going to go about things a little bit differently because there's so much to cover. I'm actually going to address the stage questions first, and then I'm going to go into a lot of additional information, things that is happening in the background with Sphere. I don't know if you guys have a habit of doing this. I regularly will look in the from section and look for sim in the Discord and read through, try to understand what's going on, because quite often he will drop little bits of alpha here and there. So no worries, I've compiled that all together, and that'll be a big part of today's AMA. But before we get there, I'm going to dive into the questions so we can get through those and then have more time at the end to kind of explore all these different ecosystem components. So the first couple questions actually come from the YouTube stream. So the first will be from Curtis. Hey, Price, would be super helpful to me and maybe others as well if you're able to timestamp some of the different conversations you have in the AMA. There's a few key things would love to hear, so timestamp would really help with that if you could. So this is a good suggestion about the timestamps, but it will actually take some work to see how I can easily and efficiently integrate that into the live streams, but I will see what I can do. Next up is Bay Area Research. Why are you working with these lower level blockchains? Sphere is ready and able to build where there is a need and desire. So asking about SUI, BNB, APTOS, and further question is some change in projects have searched us out, and in the case of Chronos, incentivize Sphere holders with the airdrop. Yes, indeed. So to answer your question, Bay Area, about these different blockchains and how we're expanding within that, Sphere is ready and able to build where there is a need and a desire, as you mentioned. Some change in projects have searched us out, and as you mentioned in the case of Chronos, has incentivized Sphere with the airdrop for us to build with them. So these types of partnerships where we're being reached out to, or we are reaching out and think that we can help or work synergistically with a project, that's always going to be favored over other options. But even so, we are constantly considering our options. So we're going to be continued to build, but those projects where we can have those partnerships, of course, we're going to be working more, we're going to prioritize working with them. All right. So those were two from the YouTube questions, and now we'll get to the stage questions. So first is from Polar, and Polar had asked, as Sphere is a newcomer to ARB, does this mean we won't try to contest Plutus in Arbitrum governance, such as R, DNT, ARB, DPX, SPA, and Jones? So, good question, and I was looking to address this in general anyway, so it's a good way to kind of talk about this. So there has been some interest in the community about Sphere accumulating ARB tokens. However, ARB is only a governance token and does not have any direct yield associated with it. Therefore, any efforts to accumulate ARB governance would come at a financial cost, and those costs could otherwise be used to give yield to YL Sphere, for example. It would essentially be a zero revenue model just for the sake of governance, which does not necessarily make sense, especially from a cost revenue perspective. Now, Some have asked about like grants, which are always nice and possible, but grants can be meticulous and take a lot of time to bring to fruition. Additionally, as a relative newcomer to Arbitrum, those grants would likely be even more effort than they are worth. So ultimately, governance with direct yield associated with it, be it driving emissions or bribes, is going to be far more worthwhile from that cost revenue perspective. So it's a really good question. It's a really important topic. And, that's the kind of the rationale about why we're not as focused on, obtaining these tokens. The second part to that question from Polar was also, if Sphere will never be a DAO, then where will the idea of a Sphere governance war come from? And this is also a good question. So a project does not have to be a DAO to have a governance token with utility and yield. Tetu is a great example because VE Tetu is yield bearing and it can participate in voting to direct admissions, such as Balancer, for example. It's a great example. And also that governance can vote on proposals for the future of the project. But even so, Tetu is not a DAO. So the same will be true with VE Sphere, where VE Spherians will be able to vote to direct emissions, for example, earn bribe rewards if applicable, and vote on proposals without needing Sphere finance to become a DAO. And the more value and utility built into Sphere and VE Sphere from the ecosystem, the more interested other projects can become in the Sphere token. So that is how you can have a Sphere token governance war without needing Sphere to be a DAO. Wild Center asked in the chat, do we happen to get flare ducks on Dyson yet? Not quite yet. Yeah, Hugh. There's a lot that I'm covering in this one, so it's going to be an important one to reference or kind of go back to because there is a lot today sometime. It's ultimately up to when those vaults are finalized, when we can get everything pushed, and I can't say anything about that information until it's officially shared. All right. It will be soon. It will be soon. Fear not. All right. Quick tea sip. And we are back on our way. So, Sero had asked in the stage questions, will we get some partnership with Airdrop given to the Sphere holders at some point in time? And I believe this question came before the Chronos event, but indeed, there is Airdrop eligibility for approximately $210 worth of VECHR with our upcoming partner for Chronos for the top 200 wallets that lock Sphere between March 30th and April 16th. And early lockers, those that had locked before March 30th, are still, of course, being rewarded in WMatic. But specifically for this event, we're talking about new Sphere that is locked between March 30th and April 16th. For those interested, Chronos is bringing a pretty unique model to Ve33, which is the maturity adjusted LPs, or MA NFTs, dubbed sticky liquidity. Chronos, it's actually a pretty interesting article. They studied other Ve33 dexes and noticed that the token price was correlated with TVL, with LP TVL. So with the maturity adjusted NFTs, with the LP being an NFT, and the way that they've structured this, the longer that your LP is staked, the higher your APR boost up to a max. So you are free to leave the liquidity position at any time, but you're going to be heavily rewarded for staying staked in the LP, hence the nickname Sticky Liquidity. This also introduces a time value to the LP position and allows the LP position to be tradable on NFT marketplaces. So altogether, Chronos aims to better maintain TVL with this sticky liquidity model, and it is not something that has been done before on these VE33 dexes, which is what makes it so interesting. And so cool that they are partnering with Sphere. So VECHR for the airdrop, right? It can be used to partake in governance. It can be used to earn bribes, as well as pool swap fees, and of course, drive emissions. And again, to be clear, it does not matter how much you had locked before March 30th. It is only new Sphere locked between March 30th and April 16th. And I'm pretty sure the lowest amount is right around 70,000 Sphere tokens. So we're starting to hover at that $200 mark. All right. And then also remember that each new Sphere lock is going to create a new unlock time. So new locks are not going to affect your old locks. All right. So that was a lot, but let me catch up in chat a little bit. All right. Elena asked, any chance we get insight to treasury status? We are still working on those reports and trying to make it such that it is something that we can easily post regularly. And if VAPR will rise due to compounding. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. If you mean the compounding of the treasury, then yes. Or if you mean that if you compound your returns, it won't necessarily change the VAPR that much, though of course you'll be earning on your compounded yield. But I'm not sure I understand that question fully. All right. Very good. Seems like I am all caught up. So, Storm Rage had asked, I noticed a lot of questions in last AMA that ultimately boiled down to how all the different parts of Sphere work together and how they generate yield or price go up for Sphere. Maybe a new overview with all revenue streams is due. Probably would be an hour-long video, though. Well, you are right that one of the biggest barriers, one of the challenges for Sphere is breaking down all of these ecosystem components in a way that can be easily digested for users, novice and experienced. So with us nearing the completion of this development phase, we are working with a marketing team to help us do just that. Additionally, of course, I will continue to make educational videos to help break down and simplify these concepts as well. And I always love hearing community suggestions for videos. If they're good suggestions, very frequently I will take those and run with them. So appreciate the comments. Lilo just said that we should be getting flare decks on Dyson this epoch. So that is very, very soon. And Lilo just dropped a link to the Twitter post about Dyson and flare decks. Very nice. Dropping some alpha in these AMAs. You never know we're going to sneak some alpha in. All right. Next stage question by Mauro Diber. Hello, I'm holding Sphere since pre-sale. I don't read news since several months. Is it possible to do some action with Sphere, such as stake it? Yes. So first off, thank you for offering to help guide Mauro. Ape, YL Ape, we appreciate that. Right now, there are a few different ways to put Sphere to work for you. You can single stake on Dyson, which is locking for 4 months and earning, right now it's approximately 12% in APR in blue chip tokens. And you can also pair your Sphere with Wmatic at an 80-20 ratio and stake it in Balancer or Solid Lizard and earn approximately 30% in yield from those platforms. Also, if you yield lock Sphere now, you'll be eligible for the VECHR airdrop from Chronos I just mentioned up until April 16th at 0000 UTC. That is when the snapshot will be taken. All right. Next question was from Jack Dribber about Penrose. So thank you, YL Ape, once again for stepping in and helping out. There was an issue with the domain of Penrose. where it was not loading, but everything has been fixed now. So that shouldn't be a problem. But you can always check for updates about Penrose in #select_project, #Penrose project. And you can, of course, ask the chat and kind of find out what's going on. But yes, thank you, 8, for stepping in and helping out with that. All right, very good. So far everything's running smoothly. Okay, Yo LFG had asked, any first sphere left? I'll be honest, I don't know what this question meant. So Yo LFG, if you're here, or if you can maybe post another question in the stage questions, we'll be able to get to that and kind of figure that out. But I apologize, I'm not really sure what this question was about, so I'm gonna, for the sake of time, move on. My GOT had asked, hey, cool news regarding Chronos airdrop. Indeed. Quick question though, checked my wallet. Okay, yeah, so this question was basically about the details of the airdrop. And once again, it does not matter how much sphere you had locked prior to March 30th. Only new sphere that is locked between March 30th and April 16th is considered for the airdrop. OG holder's first sphere. I would imagine so. Then, if that's what Yo LFG is talking about, any first OG holders, obviously. I could figure it out. I believe so. I believe there's a lot of them, yeah. Yeah, I can say for myself personally, my first purchase was I believe the second or third day after the public liquidity launch, and I've been holding ever since. So, if that counts, all right. Very good, very good. Few more questions here. I see we've got another one popping up in stage questions. I'll also check in on the Twitter before I'm done with these questions. And then, as I mentioned, I have a lot to cover about the different ecosystem updates. So, Fract in stage questions. For the Uni 3 pools, only being taxed on profit, is profit defined by an entry or by profit after a rebalance? Say tokens drops and it forces a rebalance, so now I have some permanent loss. Now if I gain 1%, is that taxed? So I think the way that you phrase this question, I'd like to kind of specify how the performance fees work. So first on, the performance fees on Dyson come from yield harvests. So for Uniswap V3, for example, let's say it's USDC WETH vault, the liquidity is going to earn swap fees in the form of more USDC and WETH. But on Uniswap V3, those fees have to be claimed. So Dyson will automatically claim and compound those fees, and while claiming the fees earned, the revenue, that is when Dyson will take the performance fee on those swap fees earned. Currently, it is a set flat 2% fee, regardless of profit, just to cover gas cost. And that's because we are working on a new integration on Dyson to showcase all of the performance fees from the contract to be updated in real time. We are also working on back tests for our for our Uniswap pools to be displayed in our front end. We are working to show rebalancing loss as well, since it is a unique feature of Dyson to be able to rebalance via 1-inch for the lowest possible slippage swaps. And we're planning on adding a harvest functionality so that you can actually harvest for yourself if 24 hours passes without a deposit or withdrawal to trigger those compounds. So as you can tell, there are a lot of updates being integrated into these Uniswap V3 vaults in terms of their presentation and how they're functioning. So should be very interesting to see over time. And yes, indeed, Sinner, you do hear wind chimes. If it's annoying, I can go and close the window. Just let me know. All right. A couple more questions here. Moto, who is now Silverboy, apparently, had asked, how often will liquid farmed Matic rebase? And this is a good question. However, once more official information is released, we'll be able to go into more detail about how FarmMatic works. All right. Wasn't annoying. Okay, good. Adds to the meditation effect. Indeed. All right, well, we'll keep the wind chimes in, but thanks for pointing it out. All right. Tsero, another question, and looks like we'll have another one in stage question before we move on to the ecosystem updates. But Tsero had asked, is it planned to have an accelerated pace to bring more and more pools to Dyson? Does Dyson need an improved does Dyson need an approval for using other protocol pools to maximize them and auto compound? So Dyson does not necessarily need approval to build on top of other protocols, right? Take the Uniswap V3 pools, for example. However, partnerships are going to provide better publicity and free marketing in a sense, because with a partnership, that protocol is willing to comment, tweet, and talk about our vaults versus us having to do all of that work on our own. It also just kind of makes sense to build synergistically with as many protocols as we can, given that our specialty is capital efficiency. So on that note, we are always working on ways to increase our workflow efficiency as well. And with so much in the pipeline, I think you'll be pleasantly pleased with the continued upgrades and integrations that Dyson will have over the next weeks and months. Yes, FlareDex is on Avalanche. All right. Let me go into stage questions because I see, yes, there's one more question here. Challenger Defender, is there any way we could have a Sphere ecosystem app directly to Ledger so Sphere can get a boost in recognition? I guess that would have to come in through the marketing department, and it's an interesting suggestion. So what I would encourage you to do is actually put it in our hashtag suggestions or Sphere ideas. That way it's there and we can kind of reference it. So yeah, it's a good thought. Okay. All right. So I'm through all of the current questions, but of course, you guys feel free to ask away if you think of anything. I'm going to double check. Does not look like we have any questions on Twitter Space. And all right. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with all of these different ecosystem updates that I have, because there's a lot. All right. So first off, in terms of Dyson and some of these different updates, we've successfully resolved our APR display issue for the Uniswap V3 pools. I feel like this was a very under-celebrated achievement. This was an issue for a very long time because we were changing many things, and that has now been updated. So I think it calls for celebration. You can now see all of the accurate APRs based on the 24-hour volume for each pool. And as I mentioned, we are working on additional analytics for those pools. The high APR figures for the Uniswap Optimism pools have also been fixed as well. All right. We've also resolved the gains GNS TVL display and also implemented a fix for the wallet and deposited dollar values. There was also an issue where there were RPCs that were triggering antivirus software. And that was basically wrongfully detecting these RPCs. And that was not originating from Dyson. Rather, it was originating from an OmniaTek RPC endpoint. And we have removed those endpoints for the time being to ensure that Dyson users do not experience any of those false positive reactions from the antivirus software. So we do apologize for that when it had occurred. But again, did not originate from Dyson. A new small feature has been introduced to Dyson where you can now link a direct vault to help share with family and friends. You can simply open the vault and copy and share the URL. We are also still working on ensuring the proper pricing and APY of our SP Satin vault, though that depends on when Satin can be listed on exchanges. The previously sunsetted LUSD die pool on Solid Lizard is now live again, as it has received emissions and votes this week. T-sip time. All right. And just want to reiterate, we've mentioned this before, but as Dyson's VE holdings grow, it can be used to vote on hybrid pairs that bring yield to the SP vaults to even further amplify yield. So I think that's a really cool way to amplify and continue to encourage the SP liquidity by using bribes from other vaults to direct into that yield. But that has to wait until Dyson's VE holdings grow enough to be able to do that. Oh, from Efro, I'm getting false positives again on AVG PC version. Just started again today. Okay, please create a bug report for us in the Dyson area, or mods, if you could help out with that. I appreciate you letting us know about that. All right. Some other updates about Dyson. We finished our QuickSwap V3 integrations, which should be going live soon. Sorry, I'm getting caught up in chat here. Okay. We finished, yes, so we finished QuickSwap V3 integrations for Dyson, which should be going live soon. And we've also been in touch with MayaDAO and Matisse, as well as a few other protocols adopting V3. So these are some additional vaults that can be in the works with Dyson. On the matter of burns, yes. So our focus is on retaining users to be engaged with our protocol. So those that lock their tokens are the most committed and therefore deserve the focus of ecosystem yield. The goal is to create a protocol where users can earn yield perpetually based on ecosystem profits. Now, there's still the element of forced appreciation in that tokens must be locked in order to earn the greatest yield from the ecosystem. Burns are a sensitive and kind of tricky subject because burning runs the risk of wasting liquidity, in a sense, on those who are not committed to the protocol, because users who are locked would be unable to sell, and you would be providing liquidity to those who want to exit the most, where instead we want to provide value to the ones committing to the ecosystem the most. So, what we've kind of come to is that in the future, if the community continues to want to reinstate burns in some manner, then we can approach it. But in the meantime, we have to, first set the foundation of yield generation, which includes all of the different ecosystem components in this development cycle. And as that is happening, the majority of yield available will go to token lockers. And then one way or another, ultimately, the appreciation of the token ideally should stem from its value. So there's a lot within that, but I did want to touch upon that because it came up this past week. All right. Let me pause here because I see another stage question in the Discord. Moto, aka Silverboy, asked again, how often LFmatic rebasing? So I will reiterate. It's a good question, but once official information is released, we'll be able to go more in detail about how Liquid FarmMatic works. All right, gotta move on. Sorry. All right. This was interesting. So there was some questions about YL Sphere and its yield. So, and anyone can calculate this, but based on the amount of YL Sphere in the protocol and the current yield, the annual rewards to lockers is around $1.2 million. And with a treasury size of around 13.5 million, that is a yield of roughly 9% to offset the yield streamed to YL Sphere, at least as of now. So the treasury is farming a lot of stables and volatile assets, and of course most of that yield goes towards lockers. We are still seeking to make the yield from the treasury even more transparent, and we've been working with Multifarm, who are one of, if not the biggest name in the game, and obviously we've encountered a lot of issues with that, as many have seen and pointed out. So at the moment, there is some reconstruction happening within the team to showcase a more transparent report on hopefully a more frequent basis. So to kind of further answer someone's question from earlier. Also, something to note, Dyson itself is still a new product with around 3 million in TVL. So this is not going to be offsetting the double-digit yield that goes to YL Spherians at this point. And naturally, though, we have been working pretty relentlessly on new methods to get more yield towards Sphere as a whole. The liquid wrappers have been a very good support, and we are building more from different projects, including Tetu, Chronos, of course, Flare Dex, as we've mentioned, which will the Sphere Vault will be out this epoch. Equilibre with SP Vara on the Kava chain, and of course more in the future. And of course, even more within Dyson as well. There's so many things that we can do with Dyson when it comes to capital efficiency, simple and exotic strategies, all of these different things. There's a lot of potential opportunities within Dyson. And in some way, it's somewhat of a shotgun approach, where we really only need one or two of these partner protocols to succeed to bring significant revenue to Dyson and therefore to Sphere. But regardless, the Ve33 model allows for some pretty high quality yield farming, while Dyson takes on the risk of vote locking the tokens. So it's a pretty cool system. Okay, Spherelend and Prion. These are also in their final stages, which should drive more revenue towards the protocol as well. Prion will, of course, offer 0% interest loans with multiple collateral options and novel tokenomics. It is a CDP with our own stablecoin, Star, and Star's liquidity as well. Now, in the future, the plan is to have Star as an omni-chain token, where you can add collateral on one chain and then get Star minted on another chain. So that is pretty cool. Right now, the team is deciding on which chain to actually launch Prion in order to gain the most traction, such as Polygon versus Arbitrum. Arbitrum has had way more traction in eyes at the present time, but either way, it could also be launched cross-chain. But placing more emphasis on a certain chain may give it more of an edge, given the current stream of hype. So, we were interested to hear, your thoughts on that as well. Some have asked about the difference between Prion and Spherelend. Spherelend is a money market, where it is basically a platform for other users to lend and borrow different tokens. Both platforms will allow looping to some degree. For example, we talked about the Matic and STMatic LP collateral as a loop. And then after Spherelend and Prion, moving and transitioning YL Sphere to those V3 tokenomics, VE Sphere should be our next priority, since at that point we can have our liquidity farming essentially as protocol-owned liquidity and forward that yield to VE Sphere lockers. Right? Does that make sense to people? If you're providing Sphere as liquidity into VE Sphere, that 80/20 LP is essentially locked in the protocol as protocol-owned liquidity for the duration of the lock. And while it's locked, it can be yield farmed, and that yield can stream to VE Spherians. So just another component of the yield streams, the revenue streams that will go into VE Sphere. All right. FarmMatic, let's talk about it. It's finishing up as well and should be on its way soon. And this is somewhat interesting. The goal of liquid FarmMatic is to have better yield than liquid staking derivatives, and will actually be able to incorporate liquid staking derivatives, or LSDs, within it. So as Sim had mentioned, it is the LSD of LSDs, so to speak, because you can have other liquid staking derivatives within Lovematic itself. We are still working on an auto bribing solution for Lovematic so that it can bribe itself on protocols like Satin. And this will allow yields from other protocols to be directed as bribes back to users, which should aid Lovematic in TVL growth. I also touched upon this a bit earlier, but the Spherematic liquidity pool is incentivized on Satin as well as Balancer. So now there's 3 different main ways you can earn on the Sphere token. Just to touch on this as well, we're kind of in an awkward situation as of right now where we have multiple products close to completion, and once completed, they should be able to support each other greatly, which should then produce significantly more revenue for the protocol for Sphere. And just to kind of highlight some of these yields, we talked about Balancer, so our VE-BAL holdings and VE-TETU holdings, our governance over Balancer, can go towards voting for our liquidity with minimal dilution because it's Balancer, and most of that yield can go to VE Sphere lockers once we get to that point. Of course, all of our VE dexes can be directed to our own protocol-owned liquidity, and the more that our protocol-owned liquidity can be yield farmed, the more that can be streamed to others. Oh, Crypto RY. Take care. Good night. Thanks for being here. All right. So yes, in terms of all of the different yield streams that will be going into VE Sphere, Sphere's liquidity, as I mentioned, everything from Dyson, the performance fees, the protocol-owned liquidity, where the treasury can farm within Dyson and use its governance to boost those vaults for increased yield. Sphere lend fees going to lockers, Prion yield going towards lockers. There's many different revenue streams, and that has been the goal of Sphere from the beginning. Now, from there, kind of what we touched upon in an earlier question, in the distant future, we can move to a more decentralized approach where the community can have more of a voice via VE Sphere governance. But overall, the framework for this will be laid out in more detail when the time comes. I also wanted to touch on the Balancer yield because it's lowered from around 40% to 30% for Sphere's BPT. And this is going to fluctuate with every epoch based on BAL emissions available in that upcoming epoch. Also, BAL emissions decay by around 16% every year, and that recently occurred, that decay. Additionally, how much has been bribed from other protocols and whether or not it's profitable to engage in bribing will change over time. And the way the bribes work for the Balancer pools is that we always need to evaluate how profitable it will be for us to bribe. The goal for bribing is to pay $1 and then get more than $1 back in emissions, in this case, the BAL tokens. And this kind of allows you to recycle bribes. So for example, if you use $20,000 in bribes and you get back $25,000 in emissions, then the initial $20,000 can again be used to bribe, and then you yield $5,000. But unfortunately, the past couple epochs of Balancer have not been as profitable due to increasing bribes from other protocols, likely due to the recent emissions decay. So all in all, to say that these are the reasons that are affecting the APR of Sphere's liquidity on Balancer. Also still working on the Sphere Wmatic Dyson vaults. And when that does come out, users who currently have their liquidity staked in Balancer would simply need to unstake from Balancer and then deposit and stake their LP, their BPT in Dyson once that vault is finalized and becomes live. Also wanted to touch on Dystopia and Cone, Penrose, and Unknown. The Dystopia Cone team is working on their V2, and only when it is live can we improve Penrose and Unknown, since of course they are built on top of Dystopia and Cone. We still see questions about this coming up every now and then, so just wanted to reiterate that. And then we recently had a call with the marketing team for the new marketing road plan, and we will be as transparent as we can throughout this process without giving away too many details. But the vision of Sphere was explained to the marketing team, and now it is on the marketing team to convert that into quote-unquote digestible buzz. So from one perspective, this should tell you that we are setting many elements in motion for when we can finally place all of these chess pieces that we've been waiting for so long, so that they can finally be played. And again, in my mind, I always go back to this concept of a clock with all of the different cogs and pieces that have to be set in place. And once enough of the clock is in place and it can start ticking, it starts to make sense. But if you look at each individual component as it's being added, it's not going to make as much. It's not going to make as much sense. Marketing was always part of our roadmap, as I mentioned before, and you can see in the Sphere Finance website in our roadmap. It's just been about waiting for waiting for those appropriate pieces to be in place before the entire vision makes sense enough to then push the marketing forward. All right. I feel like I have just been vomiting information, so let me take a second and touch base in stage chat. Does anyone have any questions about everything I just went through, or does anyone want clarification on anything that I talked about? Oops. When Surma, not sure what you mean. All right, let's see here. Oh, Surma. Yeah, Surma has been doing a very good job on constructing these different Dune analytics. For example, for the Chronos airdrop, you can use Surma's Dune analytics to see where you sit in the top 200. So very, very good work. When is Thune? That is the age-old question, is it not? That should be on a t-shirt, Silver Boy. All right. I don't see any questions in the Twitter spaces. Any additional questions in our stage chat? I'm kind of impressed with myself. I'm not going to lie. I got through that information much more efficiently than I anticipated. I think it's because I, again, just kind of vomited all of that information. So I apologize if it was not easy to digest everything. But at least it is all there. You know, if anything, I hope that given everything that we've done and have been working on, despite the market conditions, I mean, I know things are better now with the, where prices are. in the crypto market as a whole, but we could, basically what I'm trying to say is we did not give up during the bear market when things were getting rough. Instead, we put our heads down and simply worked harder. So I just hope that for some of you, it kind of demonstrates the dedication that we have to this journey. All right, I see Sinner typing in stage chat. Otherwise, we may end up closing out early here if no one has additional questions or thoughts, comments. Let me double check on Twitter again. How am I? I'm doing well, thank you. A bit tired after, word vomiting everything, but overall I'm doing well. Thank you. And yourself? Excellent. Excellent. Well, even even if you did miss it, that's why we have the recordings. I have a question. Of all of these different components, what are you guys most excited for? Lovematic, I can tell. Everything, fair enough. ZK EVM, yeah. Another Lovematic. Yeah, the liquid farmed products offer a lot of flexibility and hopefully a lot of attention, because if we're able to yield farm in different ways that can offer higher yield than like node staking, for example, with Ethereum, just as an example, that can really attract a lot of eyes. All right. Personally, I am excited for VE Sphere voting and the potential bribes that could come with that. It's just like the cherry on top with all the different yield that is being funneled to VE Sphere. Of course, that would be very, very far down the road. But still, I think that's something I'm very excited for and curious to see how that will all integrate. Yeah, with Covenant, as Sarah mentioned. True. Yeah, we have not didn't really talk much about Covenant, but absolutely, that is part of it as well. Yeah, a lot of so many things being added to Dyson. Sphere is the core product, and then Dyson's more or less a major component of the engine. BD on full motion? I actually don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean by that. I need clarification. BizDev. Okay. All right. Well, we are winding down. Oh, very nice. CryptoFat shared a link to the Sphere Token Wars, which if you guys aren't familiar with the DeFi Wars website, it shows the breakdown of the token holdings, as well as for Sphere, the strength of the pegs. So it's a really cool website to kind of explore and kind of get an idea of where other protocols with pegged assets come into play with these governance tokens, how Sphere compares to that. Oh. The Sphere the Twitter ended. That's okay. We are basically it concluded, so that's okay that the Twitter space ended prematurely. No worries on that. Covenant is basically curve convex using Sphere. No. So you can think of Covenant as like a Craigslist for bribing. So, yes. So the goal of Covenant is to make... Okay. The goal of Covenant is to make bribing and voting more capital efficient, essentially. To make sure that when individuals bribe, they get the most out of their bribes, and that voters get... voters are held to their word, so to speak, so that those bribes don't go to waste, that they're most efficiently used. All right. Well, I think we will look at closing things out. The Twitter Spaces ended. That's okay. We got through everything we were planning to get through, and the YouTube stream is still going. So at the end of the recording will be available there. So if people have questions about that, you can of course respond that way. All right. I think I will end it there, though. Looks like we're starting to derail in the stage chat. So thank you, everyone, so much for showing up and being here. Always remember that you matter for who you are. Once again, I always do really mean that when I say it. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being here. If you think of any questions, be sure to drop them in stage questions. We'll take a look at them next time. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye, everyone.